Pixar Animation Studios, the creators of some of the best and most thought-provoking kids animated films ever, and some of the most mind-baffling stupid films to come out of animation. I love this animation studio mostly because there are only 2 films of theirs I consider to be bad, but also because almost every single one of their films are interesting, entertaining, and beautiful. So let's get into the ranking. For a list that will probably surprise you, this is the least interesting spot by far. I could go on for days talking about this film, but I will leave it short because this movie has been talked to death on the internet. I don't hate it, it's pretty entertaining, but I do not like the fart jokes, obviously. The plot is terrible and very out of place considering the last film in the Cars series was about, racing, and this one is about spies somehow, and the racing part is only about 1%. It's not the worst thing in the world, I just can't believe that the mere concept of this film even existing left the writer's room. Okay, so this spot will upset some people for sure. Onward is a bad movie. Not even kinda good, just bad. I don't think there's more generic Pixar movie to ever come out. Honestly, I'd rather watch Cars 2 again before this, even though this is objectively so much better. The animation is great, the score is fine, the voice acting could be worse, but this movie stinks more than a pair of 5-year-old socks, and I hate it. Out of the few Pixar movies that I would consider to be lower than a 5 out of 10, I have to say, this one, I don't even know what to say about it. Another case of Pixar not taking any risks at all. Hell, my favorite scene is the one where the dad gets sucked into the river, and that's a 1-to-1 copy of The Lion King. That did it infinitely better, by the way. The kid is so annoying, and the dinosaur is so uninteresting, and having 2 below average main characters, that's not a good thing. The animation is never consistent, the voice acting is aggravating, and this is still a bad movie, but it's not the worst thing in the world. On to the forgettable, I guess. Alright, the Cars series, it's rough. I never felt fully immersed in any of the Cars films, and this one is unconnectable. Take the first one, but suck all the life out of it, and you have this movie right here. One of the best things about Pixar honestly comes down to the ideas within them, and that's why this one is way down on the list. If I want to watch a race movie, I'm gonna watch Rush, or Ford versus Ferrari, not this crap. Owen Wilson is still in the top 5 voices actor to be in a Pixar film, but that really doesn't take away from the fact that this movie is not good and they made 3 of them. I've watched a few Pixar rankings on YouTube, and this one always seems to be extremely low on the list. And while I get it, I don't think this is even close to what I expect out of Pixar, especially in the time where they were still making the best animated movies of all time. It really could be worse. The world building is stellar, the shots are interesting, and the animated fur looks great. But I won't sit around here and act like there are no flaws, because there are so many. The voice acting by Kelly MacDonald and Emma Thompson is some of the worst we've seen out of Pixar, and has the most stereotypical accent known to man. It feels like it has no point in the message it's trying to achieve, and has some terrible scenes that take up way too much time. I have no idea how to feel about this film. It's right between the good and the bad of the list, meaning that everything beyond this point is at least a 6 out of 10. Okay, what the actual hell? This is almost as confusing plot-wise as Cars 2. You don't go from making a multi-billion-dollar, wholesome, family fun saga of 4 films with a great message to an action film so cheesy it can only really be enjoyed by 3-year-olds. That said, I don't think all the hate this film is receiving from wide audiences is fair, and spamming 1s on IMDb just because there is an LGBT character in the film is very lame. I can understand some of the actual criticism though. It doesn't feel right for Pixar just saying that this is the movie that Andy saw to lead him to buying Buzz Lightyear as an action figure. That's not enough to justify a hour and 45-minute movie. There's still some fun action sequences and shots here and there, but this is still C-tier Pixar at best. Cars 1 is a film that I do not have much to say about. The plot is lackluster, the animation is bottom tier for Pixar, and the 2-hour runtime feels a bit much, but something about this film is so warm and cozy. It's hard to explain, but it just feels somehow very nostalgic, even though I didn't grow up when this movie came out. Maybe that's because it's campy and unintentionally silly sometimes, but there's something here for sure. Owen Wilson and Larry the Cable Guy both kick it out of the park in the voice acting department, creating the most recognizable voices in animation history. The racing is a bit boring, and I go in and out of liking this film, but I think it's a really nice time. Well, this is a movie that exists. I saw this in theaters when it came out, and I like it a bit more now than I did then, but this is still so much worse than Finding Nemo. You want to see what Pixar did? All they did was copy and paste the entire plot from Finding Nemo and just make it with Dory instead. Very interesting. Then they knew they could make an absolute bag out of it, and they clearly did, with $700 million. I like this film, and there aren't too many flaws. It's just like blue Takis. I'll eat them, and they taste as good as the original, but they just changed one tiny aspect and made a bag doing it, and for that, that's just disrespectful, so I have to put it lower on the list. Why is everyone hating on Turning Red? I think it's alright. Sure, it could have dealt with puberty in a much more interesting and ambitious way, but I'm just impressed this film exists. Yeah, it's a little cringe, but isn't that just what teenagers are? The backstory of the panda and that sort of thing is a bit less interesting, and it makes this film just kind of a mess. But, I mean, come on. This one's still good. That's really all I have to say about it. Didn't blow me away, but definitely wasn't as bad as people were saying it is. No one ever talks about this movie, and while I understand why, I think it's just a bit underrated. Sure, it has no deeper meaning or ambitious anything, really. It's for sure a definite fun time, and I can't imagine someone disliking this film. Of course, the original film is so much better. But nonetheless, if you haven't seen this one yet, you should really give it a chance. I enjoyed it. You guys ready for my super in-depth and thoughtful review of this movie? Ants is better. Oh man, what a change of pace this is. Luca is one of the more laid-back Pixar films, and those are undeniably great once in a while. The plot is somewhat lackluster, which almost works with the film. I know that sounds like an insult, but it's not. There's almost nothing I would change about this film. The shots are breathtaking, the animation is some of the best out of any animated film, period, and the characters and setting are very realistic and fleshed out. I just think it's a little less, how should I say it, important than some of the other films higher up on this list, and that's the only reason this is pretty low. Everyone offended? Good. Alright, let's start. This is beautiful. Not just in an animated way, even though that's great too. I'm talking about the plot. Two robots falling in love in a Pixar movie sounds cheesy on paper, but is far from that in the finished film. This is one of the few examples of Pixar films making everyone cry. So that means a 10, right? Sorry, bozo, but I did not cry during this movie. And maybe that means I have a black heart, but I can't see myself putting this any higher. The humans are very sadly accurately portrayed in this film, and have a realistic goal too. This one is a lot darker than every other Pixar film, but I don't think that's a bad thing. In fact, I'd say it makes it more unique and intriguing. Overall, I know that you'll be annoyed with this spot, but wait till you see the next one. I'm sorry to say that this movie is very overrated. I think the first 10 minutes of this film make people think it's better than it is, and the whole film was great, sure, just not as great as the beginning, which is probably the best 10 minutes in any film ever. The characters are interesting, the airplane scenes are enjoyable and well animated, and even though the twist villain is predictable, there is still a good reason behind it, and I find it very interesting. The score is maybe the best out of all the movies on this list, and it's a great film to watch in class, but all that being said, it's just a bit heavy for me personally. Fun fact, a few years ago this was my favorite Pixar film. Everything looks amazing. I mean, even for the time it came out, just look how absolutely fantastic the setting is. As much as I can understand my young self's process of no deeper meaning and entertainment only, this is far from the best. There are two storylines in this film, and the one with Buzz and the rest of the gang trying to break into this toy shop, oh, it is so fun, but the one with Woody and this annoying old toy is not very interesting. Not the worst thing in the world, I just think it could be way better. Jessie's undoubtedly better in the other movies, but in this one, she is so annoying. I just want her to shut up sometimes, and there's almost nothing that she is helping Woody do in this film. Although there are some major flaws with this, I enjoyed it nonetheless, and you should probably check it out if you haven't already. Yeah, it's way worse than the first one, but how could I not still kinda love this movie? It has its flaws, and it's probably the most flawed Pixar film in general. Edna Mode is underused, Jack is overused, Bob is jealous and mean to his wife the entire time and never redeems himself or changes over the course of the movie, and the boat ending is lazy, although it still has some fun scenes. The voice acting is once again blowing it out of the park. The villain is a lot more interesting than other villains, and although not fully developed, it still creates some much more needed suspense and tension, and yeah, overall I think this movie is pretty great. For those that don't know, this was not only the first Pixar film, it was the first fully computer animated film. Very impressive for something that still looks somewhat passable today. The plot of this one is not too great though. The villain is an absolute psychopath, which is great to see in a kid's movie, but he is not too well developed. Tom Hanks is the best voice actor for Pixar. It fits Woody's character perfectly, and the fact that he's playing the same role for about 2.5 decades is very impressive, and you can tell that he put his absolute heart into it. And although this isn't too high on the list, it's definitely a very well done film, and I'm not even gonna say you should watch this movie. I know you've already seen it. This was the Pixar film that never really connected with me. I know it was good, but the plot and characters were nothing special. Well, turns out we all make mistakes because this is a gosh darn masterpiece. It's very sweet, Ellen DeGeneres isn't annoying somehow, and Marlin is a fantastic Pixar character. However, I don't think the world building is that interesting at all. Whereas some Pixar films are so expressive and new with their setting, this one just feels like the ocean. Yeah. Although it still holds true that I will never fully appreciate this film given that it's doing much less than almost every other Pixar film, I still absolutely adore it and I can understand why this is so many people's favorite. Man, what a film. The world building in this is so great compared to Finding Nemo. In this film, there's a whole new places they have to come up with, and what they do with it is so fun and imaginative. The twist villain works here more than any other twist villain in Pixar, which granted, isn't saying too much, but for 9-year-old me, it was surprising enough. The score is beautiful and immersive and always comes at the right time. But that's the thing about Pixar. They all make you feel immersed in the story and characters while you're watching. It's how the film works after the experience. The aspect most critics love about this animation studio is that most of their films make you think in one way or another. In Coco, not so much. Sure, it has its own ideas it's trying to pull off, but there is no hidden important message. Still a great film, just somewhat of a big part missing. Wow, this was so much more than I could have ever imagined for this film. For a fourth movie, it surprises me to say that this might be the deepest the Toy Story films were ever willing to go. The themes about purpose were touched on in Toy Story 3, but here it's the main idea and it is beautiful. What a great place to start. And although not the best entry in the Toy Story saga perhaps, this is still an incredible film. Some of the pacing feels a bit off. Bo Peep is completely unnecessary except for one scene late in the film, but other than that, this is without a doubt the perfect send-off to the series. The ending is beautiful and very ambitious for Pixar, and just completely blew me away with how far it was willing to go. And although this film has to deal with the baggage of being quote-unquote unnecessary, this film is hard to complain about. I just pissed off everyone watching this video once again. Here we go. Ratatouille is a masterpiece, and I'm most definitely not denying that. It also has a great message of self-worth. It's just not the best. The score is great. I love seeing, or in this case, hearing Patton Oswalt's voice on the big screen. He has a fantastic voice, and I'd love him to be in more animated films. And Remy is one of the best Pixar characters verbatim. I'm not going to list off every strength this film has, because it has many, and we'd be here all day. Once again, they're just films that interest me a bit more than this film, and in my opinion, that's perfectly okay. Monsters, Inc. is a lot of people's favorite Pixar film, and I can totally see why. The concept is very original, and the world building is great with some fantastic character change in it. The only flaw is that it feels a bit corporate. Not a lot, and I still love it, it just feels like it needed a bit more heart here and there. The humor is not good. I don't think I laughed a single time, and the jokes feel like they were taken out of a 90s sitcom. I know that makes it seem like a bad film, and it's not. I like it a lot. The pacing is perfect, and John Goodman and Billy Crystal are both fantastic choices for voice actors. There's just one big flaw with this movie. Oh my god, this is just perfection. No disrespect to Toy Story 4, but if it did end here, I would be very satisfied. The thing I love most about this film is that it has an actual big-scale problem. It has a villain, and a great one at that. Although the prison escape doesn't feel too fitting for a Toy Story, it really works. The incinerator scene is incredible and very dark. The animation, obviously, is ginormous step up from the second, and there is not one flaw I can confidently point out. The ending is obviously incredible, and with these last few movies, it all comes down to personal preference. Nothing the films themselves did wrong. I'm sure this spot on the list is going to surprise a lot of people, but honestly, I really wish it was less surprising, because this film is an absolute masterpiece and is way underappreciated these days. I love it when Pixar gets dark, and this movie gets dark. There are basically two parts of the film. The first one is where Joe is exploring the afterlife with 22, which is another perfect example of world building, and Tina Fey and Jamie Foxx could not be better in their voice acting roles, by the way. The second half is Freaky Friday-ish scenario, where Joe turns into his cat and 22 turns into him. Sounds like a pretty silly concept that could lead to some very bad dialogue, right? Wrong. It is the same, if not better than the previous storyline, giving us some tension-filled scenes and some beautiful ones too. The ending is a testimony to how great this film ultimately is, and I cannot believe we have this masterpiece in the same year as Onward. Do I even need to talk about this one? We all know this film is an absolute masterpiece. Probably the most entertaining and accessible Pixar film, but there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. The entire family feels incredibly realistic in this film. The villain is the most well-developed villain so far on the list and has believable motivations the whole way through. It's a very cozy film, almost to the scale of Cars' level of coziness. The island escape adventure is an extremely entertaining plot that leaves everyone satisfied. There's really nothing I don't like about this film, but let's stop talking about this so we can talk about the best Pixar film of all time. This one is special to me. I've seen this 8 times in my life and have enjoyed it in its entirety every single time. Joy is the most interesting Pixar character to date, and although not as powerful, all the other emotions are perfectly executed as well. Anger is hilarious and serves to be the main comedic relief, even though he still feels like a real character instead of being a laughter device. Sadness is annoying, but here's the thing with that, she's supposed to be. All the emotions should at some point be aggravating in their own right, because if you had the same emotion all the time, you'd be annoying too. There is a really experimental part of the film where they enter an abstract art area with some very cool animation. I also appreciate the fact that on the surface, this film has no villain, but if you dig a little deeper, the villain is Riley herself. Most of the film takes place in her mind, and the objective is to stop her from losing her happy self, but the only reason that's happening is Riley. I also love how she isn't developed, but all her emotions are giving her complicated character development throughout the film so you can understand her thought process. The journey around the mind plot is mind-blowingly emotional, and I cry every single time I watch this movie. Bing Bong is the saddest character I have ever seen in any of these films, and the themes of growing up and some emotions taking over is so realistic. I cannot suggest this film enough, just watch it even if you've already seen it once. This film is an 11 out of 10 and is by far my favorite Pixar film. But what's your favorite? I hope you guys enjoyed the video because this was an absolute hassle to create. And if you did enjoy the video, please consider subscribing, and as always, thank you for watching.